What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're taking a look at Callisto Protocol here, a game that I would say has been pretty highly anticipated. I'm sure a lot of people want to be able to play it on their Steam Deck, and for the most part it is playable on the Steam Deck. It's not a perfect experience, but it has its issues on PC regardless. And as far as compatibility, I didn't use any forced compatibility in this video, but I did test Proton 41 here and experimental in a few areas and couldn't see any differences really in my performance, so I just left it without forcing anything. As far as the settings we're going to work with, well, we'll get into recommended settings more towards the end of the video, but what I'm dealing with here is a frame rate at 60, DirectX 12. We're going to compare it to DirectX 11. We are running 800p for the screen here of the deck, and low or disabled on pretty much everything else. I had to kind of just bring the game down and work with it that way, and it seemed to be the best option. There's a couple of settings I could turn up, but for this video I basically wanted to leave them down. I am using FSR2 on balanced as well, kind of a sweet spot that I wound up with there. I don't really like the look of performance myself, so balanced kind of as far as I wanted to go there. Anyways, let's get into it here. So we got DirectX 12 on the left, DirectX 11 game settings on the right, and you will see in this scene that there are areas where the DirectX 11 seems like it's doing better, and it does that similarly in cutscenes. Now, the cutscenes in this game are rendered, which is great, but they just act different than gameplay, especially when it comes to DirectX 12 versus 11 in the in-game settings. So while it's kind of either even here or maybe DX11 seems a little farther apart, we'll see something different when we get into gameplay. Now, this is also the second playthrough for each of these here, so we're not dealing with some of the stutters and issues we get with some of what seems to be shader caching and things going on with the game, but we'll see. But you'll see here now they're getting actually pretty even by the time we get in here, where the GPU side of things is getting hit a bit harder, and then you'll see DirectX 12 actually does a little bit better in certain areas, and we'll take a look at that when we get to gameplay as well. But I thought this was interesting to take a look at these side by side in this intro cutscene here and just kind of see what their performance was doing. And again, this is a second playthrough for both of these to make sure everything was just kind of running the best that it could. I was curious. Now, this is a first time playthrough for both right here, and you can see DirectX 11 when we get into gameplay is suffering a lot more in the exact same area. When we walked out of that cell, you saw what happened. Both stuttered and had issues, but DirectX 11 had major issues. I thought it was going to crash, but it didn't. And then walking down this hall in the same area of the game here, again, in gameplay, DirectX 12 for me is performing better when selected in the in-game settings versus the DX11. More GPU usage, it's using the CPU better. Yes, we're using more wattage and more battery, but we are getting better performance, at least for me. I'd be interested to hear what kind of performance you guys are getting, because this game has released with a lot of PC issues. It's acting up on my RTX 3060 as well, so my performance in testing here may not exactly match yours. Again, you see this stutter right here? DirectX 11 had much more trouble loading in here than DirectX 12, and again, this is a first time go through for both of these right here. So in gameplay, definitely seems to be better. Now watch this cutscene right here. Things will go right back to pretty much even. So when you get into these rendered out cutscenes, DX11 and 12 will be pretty much similar, but in gameplay, a big difference there. So very interesting here. Now just back to our DX12, you'll see big dips and problems though, 16 FPS and then back up. And this happens on my regular desktop PC as well. There are some patches needed, but I do believe they could smooth this game out enough to where we could easily get a 30 or 40 FPS cap in this game, but it is difficult right now. Now here's DirectX 12 and 11 again versus each other in this scene, and again this is a first time playthrough for both right here, and you'll see the same thing we saw coming out of that cell. DirectX 11 just isn't performing as well as DX12 here on a first time playthrough in this particular scene. So, you know, the story kind of be told there, but definitely play around. If you're having too much trouble with DX12, try DX11. Your results may be a little different, but for me, just in all my testing here in a few hours of this game, this is what I'm getting. But even in DX12, you can see on a first time playthrough here, the jankiness and the drops and stuff. There's a lot going on here that needs to be straightened out. Now, if I lock the same scene to 30 FPS, it plays a little bit better, but again, this is a second time playthrough of this scene, and I'll show you more of that in just a minute. But overall in the game, I think the game lends itself to 30 FPS pretty well for the most part, and we'll talk more about that too. But I think Callisto Protocol being a very interesting one, having some PC issues on launch day here, but pretty playable on the Steam Deck. Now, going into this scene, this is a second playthrough on DX12. you're going to see a lot less of those dips and stutters than you did on the first time. So if you go back and look at that and you're looking at this, you'll see we're not going down to 26 FPS in some of these areas like we did before. It's still dipping and going all over, but it's not as bad. Right here where this guy swings around, we hit like 26 FPS right here on that first time playthrough. So yes, there is a difference if you've been to an area before or you haven't. And I know some of you would want to know that. So our recommended settings for me, DirectX 12, 800p here, low on everything as much as you can, or disabled. You might be able to turn some of these things up in some areas, but it's pretty difficult right now. We want to see some patches and fixes here. FSR2 balanced, and yeah, all the settings I've shown you here. And for me, locking the game to 30. I think the game lends itself to 30 FPS pretty well. 40 is okay, but you're still going to dip more often because the game just does that, especially in load-in areas or combat or certain things or first-time playthrough areas. So for me, the DirectX 12 with those low settings and FSR2 on balance is just working out pretty well. And for me, making Callisto Protocol fairly playable on the Steam Deck, but yes, it has major performance issues that you do need to be aware of if you're going to be playing the game on here. But this is my take, and this is what I've seen with about 3 or 4 hours of the game. All right, guys, thanks a lot for coming to check it out as always. I appreciate it. And if you haven't already, subscribe, thumbs up, ring the bell, and I'll see you guys in the next one.